Hello everyone. In this video, I want to talk about working with PDFs in Noteey, and I also want to break down my workflow for working with Noteey and my Boox e-ink tablet. Now, before we get into the meat of the video, I have a 25% discount promo code. So if you want to purchase Noteey, when you go to do the purchase, put in Anton as the promo code, you'll get 25% off. You also support the channel, so I would appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the video. So first thing we want to do is put a PDF into Noteey. If you've done nothing with the PDF, basically what you can do with the PDF is you can import that PDF, you can add highlights to it and set up the different types of highlights. One's going to be a text-based highlight where you put a highlight on there, and the other is going to be an area-based highlight where you select a particular area of the PDF and you highlight it that way. So those are the only two different options that you'll have when you're working with a PDF, if you're completely starting out with it just in Noteey itself. But for most people, I think a common workflow is that you might be wanting to work with your PDF outside of Noteey. Noteey is a desktop only application. I like to have my PDF when I'm reading it and annotating it on my Boox device. So I'm typically marking it up on my Boox device before coming into Noteey and then adding any annotations there. So let's go into a PDF and I am going to show what works on or what gets imported and what you can see within Noteey when you add annotations outside of Noteey. So if you have a PDF and you've already annotated it up, let's go ahead and add some of your common ones where you would come in here and you would add a highlight. Let's just make that yellow. You will have some comments in here, test comments. Get my typing right. And you would have that in there. And that's pretty much, I would say, from the basic sense, you would have something highlighted and then you will have notes. Now, if you're on a tablet device, or even if you're not on a tablet device and you're on a device that supports marking up the PDF, as if you're handwriting on it, that's another way you can do this as well. So let's take it from this step first, where I now have a PDF that has highlights on it, and I may have some notes. Let's see what will actually show here on the Noteey side. We'll go ahead and we'll save these. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this PDF over into Noteey, and let's see what happens. So first thing that happens is you get an option on how you want to import the PDF. Now, this happens with other files as well, but strictly sticking to the PDF, you can either copy it into your library or you can link it from where it's located right now when you bring it into the library. There's also some default settings where you can come into your advanced settings here and you can set it to either always copy or always link, or as we have it right now, we have it to ask all the time. Now I did put in a feature request in the Noteey to see if they could change this import and enhance it a little bit to where maybe for certain object types like PDFs, images, and maybe other, I can individually set those object types to what my preference is. So for PDFs, I'm typically always selecting link mode for those. So it would be great if I could have link mode for those. Maybe for images, I always have it set to copy because I always want to bring those in. And then for anything else outside of those object types, maybe I'm just prompted to ask. Instead of the way it is right now is one setting for all files that you try to import. So I am going to go ahead and do this again. We'll leave it to prompt me. And I am going to bring this file in and I'm going to do two different types here. I'm going to do the copy mode for now, just to show what that looks like. So it brings it in. It looks just like any other card in your library. And right now you could probably see right off the bat that it's different from this other PDF here that we see here, because there's a little icon in the top on this one where it shows a little link. One thing you can also do here in the library is let's go ahead and show only the PDFs that are in my library. So just by coming in and selecting that little icon, it'll only show that particular type. You can do that for all the other types as well. But again, strictly focused on PDFs right now. So you can see that little icon is not showing up on this PDF that we just copied into the library. You can also see, if you're looking at this image here, that the highlight that we put on it is actually showing in the thumbnail here. This is a little interesting because when we click into this PDF and we open it up, the highlight does not show at all on the within Noteey. You cannot view it. And if we click on the view highlights side pane there, we don't see any highlights. So the highlights and the notes do not come over that were set up on the PDF that was brought in externally. So if those highlights were done externally outside of Noteey, they do not show up here. Now I'm going to also show some different highlighting types that you could do that will show up in here, but your typical generic highlights and notes will not show up, as we can see here. Now let's add a highlight of our own. We're just going to do the one. We'll make this green, and what we want to do here is we'll add a Noteey comment to this, because I want to show exporting the PDF, and let's see what we get from an export from Noteey. So I just highlighted this PDF. I added a note to the highlight, and this is basically the same thing we did externally in the UPDF, which is a great PDF editing software. I highly recommend it. We're basically doing the same thing we did over here, but we're doing it in Noteey, and we want to now do an export so you can see how this actually presents itself when you export the PDF. So I'm going to go ahead and export. We still have this. You can see that little message there was in Chinese or some foreign language there. That's a bug, and hopefully Noteey will see the video here and they'll fix that there. I'm going to go ahead and export this. We'll put it in the download folder, and I will go ahead and I will open that up. And when I open it up, you see something interesting here, and that is that the Noteey highlights came over, which is perfect. The comment also came over. Again, this is great, but you also have the highlights and the comments or notes that we put in when we use the external PDF software, even though they did not show over here in Noteey. Now, this is somewhat kind of good and bad, because if your workflow is to transition your PDFs into Noteey and then do all of your highlighting there, this is an issue because you don't see everything that was in the PDF. So you could actually highlight over that particular PDF. So if I come in here and let's say I was to do blue over here, and then let's export this again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to overwrite what we had there and replace it. And then let's open that up. And what we can see here is now I have a green highlight, which is not really green. What it is, there's a blue highlight that's covering a yellow highlight, and we also still have that yellow note there. So this could be a problem here, where if we click there, we see that blue one, we have the yellow one there, where you're duplicating highlights on this one particular file. Now, it would be great if Noteey could present and show us all highlights. I'm not sure if that's technically possible. Noteey, if the team is watching this video, if there's a way to actually pull those in, that would be great. But as you see what the challenges are when you're working with PDFs between external software and Noteey itself. These are things that you need to consider as you're working with PDFs that are coming from external and you're doing stuff externally to the PDF and then you're pulling them into Noteey. So my particular workflow is that this PDF, let's go ahead and delete it from Noteey here. And I'm going to hit delete. And I want to show one thing before I delete this out of Noteey. So I do have a highlight that I put on here. Let's open this up again and highlight. So I got these two highlights. These highlights live in my library. And what I want to do is I want to delete this particular PDF. And I want to show you if your workflow is to copy your PDFs into Noteey, there is a way to recover that main PDF, that parent PDF, if you've done some highlights to it and by mistake, maybe you deleted the parent. So these are the highlights to that one that I deleted. I am going to go into the trash and I'm going to delete my trash. So the parent is gone. And if I come back here and I say like locate, this should take me to the place where this particular highlight is in the parent PDF. You can see that it errors out and it does not let me do that. Now, if you want to get that parent back in here, let's say again, you mistakenly deleted it. What you can do is you can click on the highlight. You can come in here and say change source. And the one downfall here is that when you do this change source option, it points you to your file directory. So one thing that I think I would like better on here is that maybe you wanted to delete it from a copied PDF to a linked PDF. This should actually point you into the library instead of to your file directory and basically get whatever information it needs from that particular workflow instead of just going to the file directory, because I may want the PDF now to be a linked PDF instead of one where it copies it internal. So if I come in here and I click on here and I put open, and now if I come in here and I do locate, we can see now it does come in here and it locates leveraging the PDF that I linked it to from the file system. Yeah, so that's just one thing to note there if you're ever fall into that situation, but you will not be able to ever relink your highlights from a copied PDF to a linked PDF, at least not in the current implementation of Noteey. So let's go back in here. We're going to delete this all over again. And we're also going to come in here and we'll delete these two here. And we'll go back into trash and let's clean up the trash here. All right, so all that is well and good. Let's come back to, this should be the original one we had. What I want to do is I want to come in here and I will delete the highlight that we had. So we start off clean in here. Go ahead and we'll save that. And let's get into the workflow that I use. And let's clean up that list there. Go into here, go into PDFs there. And okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this PDF. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my cloud storage. And actually, it looks like I already have a copy already over here. Let me overwrite it just in case I've edited it. We'll overwrite that. Show modified. Okay, so it shows here. And if I open that, we'll see it is the same PDF that we were working with, and it has no annotations in it. And close out. And I want to show you my workflow on how I do this. So what I'll do is I have on my cloud drive on OneDrive, I have a PDF folder, and all of my PDF will go in here. And then I will when I want a PDF to end up in Noteey, I will then link it into Noteey from that particular central PDF folder that I use for all my PDFs. And I will use the link mode instead of the copy mode. Then I would just go ahead in here and I would hit import. It imports it. We can see that it is linked because of the icon shown here at the top. And if we open it, it's basically no different than any PDF that you would typically have that you would have within Noteey. Now I can come in here and I can highlight things within here. If I open up the highlight, we don't have any current ones. Let's go ahead and then put a highlight on this market insights. We will make that yellow, and we will put a area highlight over this particular image right there. And we can see that those are there. We will go ahead and close out of them. We will not export those. Now, what you might think is that the stuff that we just put in there, these highlights, you might expect that these will sync to the file that I currently have in my cloud drive. So let's go to the cloud drive and let's take a look at what we see on the cloud drive now. And this is the PDF that was linked. And if I come in here and I open that up, we'll see that we do not see those annotations. And that is because the annotations are not being saved directly to the file. That's just information that's going into Noteey's database. So we will not see those annotations at a file level until we export it out of Noteey. And then that stuff does come out and you're able to see that information. So the linking functionality doesn't benefit you in that way to where you will see any of the annotations directly saved to the PDF when you open it up. But having this stuff in the cloud drive does work this way with the Boox tablet device that I use for marking up the PDFs. So let's go ahead and switch over to the Boox device. And I want to show you what you might expect, that two-way kind of highlighting, syncing to the PDF that you might expect to work on the Noteey side does work on the Boox side. And this is how I work with it using the Boox. And typically this is my workflow and preferred path because I would rather read the PDF on a tablet device versus on my desktop, especially the ones that are pretty long. But something like this here where it's just a couple pages is fine. But when you're looking at like a book or anything that goes beyond maybe 5, 10 or more pages, I would rather sit down and look at it on my e-ink device or even the iPad and then mark it up that way. So let's go ahead and get to it on the e-ink device here. And this is my Boox Note Air 3C. And I call that out specifically because this is the only device that I've seen that's able to work in this way, where you can connect up your cloud drive to the Boox device, and you can browse that cloud drive directly from the library app. The other devices like the Manta, the Supernote, Nomad, some of the other e-ink devices that I've seen out there and have worked with, you're typically importing the PDF into their system, and it doesn't live or let you edit directly the PDF file on your cloud drive. So this is giving us that functionality here. Or let's say it's not letting us edit the file directly on the actual cloud drive. What it really is doing is that it's letting you edit that copy that you've pulled into the device, and then it syncs the changes back to the cloud drive. So let's go ahead and browse through the cloud storage. We'll go to this particular PDF that we've been working with, and I'm going to mark it up just like I would typically do. I'll add a couple other markups to it just to show what, again, works from here and maybe you might want to use. but I'll show you how I typically do it and what makes it a little bit simple here. The first thing we see here when we browse to the file is that it does have this little weight icon on the side here, and that just shows that I have not imported it into my Boox device, or that there's some new information on this particular version of that file. So even if I was to come in here and I was to open it and import it, if I was to make changes to that PDF outside of the Boox device and then browse back in here, those changes would sync via the cloud and everything, and we would still see this weight here showing that there has been changes and that I need to import those changes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that little weight symbol. It'll go ahead and update. I will open up the PDF and we have the document here, and we can see that nothing's on it, just like we have on the cloud drive. And what I would typically do is as I'm going through this particular document, knowing how Noteey pulls in the information and shows it to you where it will not show you the highlights, I don't do any of the highlighting here. So what I will typically do is, instead of doing a highlight, I will mark up the file itself. So let's go back here and I will typically put brackets around what I want to highlight. I will either point arrows to certain things, maybe I'll circle something, and I will do it that way when I'm marking up the device. Maybe I'll put little notes. Now, if I do want to put a highlight on here and I want this to show up in Noteey, the only one that I've seen that does work is if you come in here, you highlight, and instead of using the background highlight like this, use the one with the squiggly lines on it. And I will use that one there, and that will typically show up over in Noteey. As I'm reading through, I mark up using the pen and the handwriting. And if I want to add any notes or any other type of highlights, I'll do the squiggly lines here. And you can still come in here and you can add your notes. If I want to annotate and put a comment in here, I can put comments in here. If there's something I really want to remember and I don't have room to write that down using the pen, I will just come in here and I will just type that in or voice it in, hit update, and then continue and move on. And then that note is still there. Now, let's go ahead and go out of here, out of that document. And then what happens here, the way it's set up, as you can see here, it's syncing. And when that finishes syncing, I know that it goes to OneDrive. OneDrive will update on my computer. So Noteey now has access to the new updated linked file from within the cloud. If you already have it open, you will need to close it and then reopen it. So when I open it here and I scroll up, we'll see my markups are here. So the brackets around this information is there. The arrow is there. The circle is here. We also have the highlights that I had in Noteey, that I made in Noteey. Those did not show up on the Boox device. So we established that already, but you did not see those also on the device. Now, from here, what I'll typically do is, usually, again, I use only the brackets, but I wanted to show that these squiggly lines will show in Noteey, even though the highlight that shows up in the back of the text does not show when you add those externally. The ones with the squiggly marks do show up. So that's just a tip if you want to use those. So what I would do then is that I will typically come in here. I will put my highlights between the bracket within Noteey. I will add the highlight color that I want. I will come in here and then I will put whatever notes that I want on that particular PDF right here. Now, if I had any other notes that I may have put on externally, again, it's up to you on how you want to perform this particular action. But if once I add it into Noteey, then there's no need for me to have it on the other PDF. So I will then just go ahead and remove it out of there. That way I don't have it in both locations. But if your use case or workflow needs you to have access to the notes, whether you're in Noteey or not, definitely keep it in the PDF, and that way you can always get to it. Now for images, you can see where I pointed to where maybe I want to capture that image and I put an arrow to it. I can do that there. I can do that there. And yeah, this is the typical workflow, a little bit of back and forth. This could be either everything gets done on the Boox tablet device, annotated, read through, and then after the fact come here. But the way that I'm doing it, typically I have to do my annotations and stuff here, and then not too long after, the same day, come back into Noteey, then bring over any of the notes and everything that I want to. It is pretty flexible, but streamlining the workflow is definitely something you probably want to do where you don't have too many devices and softwares making changes to the same PDF files, because things could potentially get messed up, and depending on how one device's software might save those annotations to the file. So this is the typical workflow for editing the PDFs from a Boox device. This one cloud syncing function has been really a game changer for the Boox device over any of the other ink devices that I've tried. So I'm going to stick with it for specifically for PDF annotating, but obviously this is one of those really versatile devices that you can use it for pretty much all your note taking, all your PDF annotating, your ebook reading, and so on. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. If I left anything out, or if you have any questions, leave comments down in the comment section of the video. And until the next time, have a nice day.